When Sansa had first beheld the Great Sept with its marble walls and 7 crystal towers, she thought it was the most beautiful building in the world, but that had been before Joffrey beheaded her father on its steps. The Thoughts of Sansa Stark, A Clash of Kings, Chapter 52, Sansa 4. The Red Keep is obviously the focal point of the skyline of King's Landing, looming above the city below from atop Aegon's high hill. If anything could challenge the scale of the Red Keep, there are 2 places that come to mind. For a long time, the Dragon Pit was a dominating factor in the skyline. The huge domed building, meant to act as a dragon stable and arena, was able to fit a significant amount of the population of King's Landing within its walls. But the once grand building is now nothing but a ruin after the events of the Dance of the Dragons, with no Targaryen king investing the coin needed to repair it. The Dragon Pit did not mark the end of House Targaryen's huge construction projects in King's Landing. While the Dragon Pit was left to ruin, on top of Visenya's Hill will be built one of the grandest and most beautiful buildings in Westeros, so much so it has replaced the Dragon Pit as a prominent aspect of the skyline of the city after the Red Keep. We are of course talking about the Great Sept of Baelor. There have been countless smaller septs built in King's Landing since its formation in the wake of Aegon's conquest, some more prominent than others. The first sept was said to have appeared shortly after the construction of the Aegon Fort in 2 BC, made from a sunken cog found on the banks of the Blackwater Rush. But as the city grew around the Aegon Fort, this crude sept would not do for the likes of the richer small folk moving in to the city, or even the likes of the king himself. The High Septons sponsored a grander sept built up top Visenya's Hill, but this sept would seem small in comparison to the septs to come. The Sept of Remembrance was then built on the Hill of Rhaenys to honour the late Queen Rhaenys Targaryen after her death in 10 AC. But King Maegor the Cruel would destroy the Sept during the Faith Militant Uprising with his dragon Balerion the Blackdread in 42 AC, and replaced it with the Dragon Pit, which began construction soon after. King Baelor the Blessed stands out among the Targaryen kings of Westeros for his devotion to the faith. He would also be known to many as the Septon King. Baelor's faith ran so deep he would lock away his own sisters in what became known as the Maiden Vault to protect himself from being tempted by them. While some would view Baelor's devotion to the faith as a good thing, there were many who of course saw this as a negative aspect of his reign, especially with a lot of the hypocrisy and corruption within the faith Baelor was blind to. But maybe the biggest issue was the fact his focus on the faith deeply impacted his ability to be a king and rule the realm. His frequent fasting would incapacitate him, so much so he would often be on the brink of death. This all led to his Hand of the King, his uncle, the future King Viserys II, to rule the realm in his place. One day, inspired by a vision, Baelor ordered the construction of the Great Sept atop Visenya's Hill. The fate of the Grand Sept atop the hill from the reign of Aegon the Conqueror is still unknown. This new Great Sept was completed years after the death of King Baelor, and it would go on to replace the starry Sept of Oldtown as the centre of the faith in the Seven Kingdoms. When Dorne joined the Seven Kingdoms during the reign of King Daeron II, the king, with Maron Martell, Prince at Dawn, rode from the Red Keep to the Great Sept. The 2 men placed a wreath before the statue of Baelor, whom had played a key role in keeping the peace between Dawn and House Targaryen in his youth. For the rest of Targaryen rule, the Great Sept of Baelor would be used for many key religious events and ceremonies, with coronations, and near every major wedding in the city happening within its walls. None of the devoted paid Jaime any mind. They made a circuit of the Sept, worshipping at each of the 7 altars to honour the 7 aspects of the deity. To each god they made sacrifice. To each they sang a hymn. Sweet and solemn rose their voices. Thoughts of Jaime Lannister, A Feast for Crows, Chapter 8, Jaime 1. The Great Sept of Baelor has a plaza of white marble which surrounds it, featuring a statue of King Baelor the Blessed, standing tall and proud and serene upon a plinth, his face a study of benevolence. Large gardens capable of holding hundreds of people surround the Sept, with flowers and plants from all around Westeros, and even some from Essos. The main route to the Sept consists of huge marble steps that lead up to the building's main entrance. The Great Sept itself is an impressive marble structure with a great dome and several slender crystal crystal towers, each for one of the aspects of the faith. It has huge bells of which can be rung in the morning or to gather crowds that can be heard from even miles away from the city. The high dome is made of leaded glass, gold and crystal, and is said to be one of the most spectacular sights of architecture in the Seven Kingdoms. Before the doors leading into the building is a raised marble pulpit from which a septon can address a gathered crowd below. Past the towering outer doors is a hall of lamp which is suspended by globes of coloured leaded glass with a floor of polished marble. Past this entrance hall, through the inner doors, is the cavernous sept proper, with 7 broad aisles meeting beneath the dome. The interior contains benches for worshippers and a stepped marble table upon which bodies can be placed for funeral services of lords and the rich. Almost as spectacular as the Hall of Lamps, the main building has a high window, and light is reflected into rainbows by hanging crystals and the glass of the dome. In many ways, to most common men, its construction is as wondrous as the likes of the high tower or the wall. The sept itself is within the main chamber, with the 7 stone towering statues of the 7 aspects of the faith. Scented candles can be placed by worshippers at each altar, with the most placed before the altar of the mother and the maiden, but with only a few before the stranger. The warrior stands on an altar of red marble. Different altars are used for different ceremonies depending on their purpose. For example, marriages tend to be conducted at the altar between the 2 towering gilded statues of the father and the mother. There are several sets of doors leading into the sept proper. Septons use the father's door, septors the mother's door, and the silent sisters use their own sept, the stranger's sept, a smaller adjacent room to the main chamber. The Great Sept has a main chamber where most of the public worship is done, but also several smaller septs, various crypts and chapels, and a rainbow pool. The sept has tombs where many of the Targaryen kings have been laid to rest, with many ashes of long-dead Targaryens being moved from Dragonstone to the sept. Its deep vaults hold costly vestments, rings, crystal gowns, and other treasures of the faith. Below the ground is a 7-sided audience chamber, with the faces of the 7 carved into the bare stone walls, with their eyes made of onyx, malachite, yellow moonstone, and jade. There is also cells of various sizes for penitents are found in the towers, which have rough stone steps. Individuals accused by the faith can also be held in the chambers below the sept, which is often done for accused highborn transgressors. The Great Sept of Baelor plays a prominent role in the main book series, being the location of Eddard Stark's execution, which kickstarts the War of the 5 Kings. The royal wedding of Joffrey and Margaery Tyrell takes place at midday on the first day of the year 300 AC in the Great Sept of Baelor, and after Joffrey dies during his wedding feast, his body is entombed there. Later, the Faith of the 7 confines Margaery in a cell atop one of the Great Sept's towers, although mass crowds gather outside the sept in protest. Cersei Lannister is of course pleased at Margaery's arrest, but the High Septon, known as the High Sparrow, also has the Queen Regent imprisoned in a tower cell, with her later taking a walk of atonement from the sept back to the Red Keep. While we don't know what kind of role the sept will play in the Winds of Winter, we know it has one, given Margaery is still being held, with House Tyrell very keen to secure her release. In the show, the Great Sept is blown up by a vengeful Cersei. However, it does seem unlikely the book will follow this same path, but that does not mean the Great Sept of Baelor won't have some other tragic fate in the book.